Hi, welcome to Deep In. My name doesn't matter. Let's dive in. So I want to talk to you today about John Milton and the rise of allegory in Christian literature in the 1600s. So John Milton, 1608 to 1674-ish, he grows up a son of a wealthy London family, a very influential London family, and he is in line with the Puritan cause at the time. But he goes to Cambridge, graduates from Cambridge, gets his master's degree, and in the course of his studies there, he writes several poems that get published and get some notoriety. So he graduates already in a career as an author and a writer, and he goes to Europe to travel some of Europe to discover this epic that he wants to write about King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. He wants to write this huge epic, but during his time there, Oliver Cromwell kind of starts a civil war, ousts the king, and so he returns to London to work under Cromwell's regime. And as he's there, he writes for Cromwell, writing Puritan pamphlets that they're passing out to people for re-education of society. And he argues in these pamphlets that it's the right of the right of citizens to stand up against tyrannical rule and in proper authority, arguing that only God gives the authority and God invests that authority into the populace, not to a monarch. Christ is the only monarch that receives authority from God. Everyone else is citizens of that kingdom. Therefore, humanity has the right to rise up against unjust tyrants. Now, as you know, Cromwell eventually loses. Before Cromwell loses, Milton loses his eyesight. So in 1652, Milton goes completely blind. He always had bad eyesight, but he goes completely blind, and he begins to dictate all of his writing. So anything he writes, he is dictating from this point forward. Cromwell loses. Milton, as one of the court writers, kind of the court writers for Cromwell, is arrested and imprisoned for a very short time before the king releases him, because who imprisons a blind guy who can't run away and who is really just a harmless poet anyway? So in seeking to ingratiate himself to the populace, he sets free this poet that everybody seems to like and enjoy. Now, in 1658, Milton begins to write the work Paradise Lost, which is one of the greatest epics in Christian history, where he takes the story of the fall and he writes about it. And the gist of the story is that he writes about the story of the fall of man from the perspective of the devil. So there's a lot of kind of adding into the story, because the Bible honestly doesn't tell us a lot about what happened with the devil. There's only a few passages, and it doesn't tell us a lot about the circumstances of the fall and how the demons and everything and all that worked out, and if there were war in heaven and all those things. But Milton kind of extrapolates and imagines and envisions this world and how the devil would have fallen and what would have happened. And it's a beautiful and very powerful story. Now, the trouble is it was so well written that a lot of people think that what Milton says is straight out gospel and straight true, but it's not. It's a fictional retelling of the fall, and it's beautiful and amazing, and you ought to read it. Paradise Lost, you ought to read it. Especially read the preface by C.S. Lewis. Beautiful, powerful work that will inspire your soul to the gospel, and yet at the same time, it is not in and of itself a true work. It's a kind of a historical fiction in many ways. And he is extrapolating on some ideas that he has in his head. So much of what we believe about the devil, before we start studying the Bible for what it says, much of what we believe about the devil comes from Paradise Lost. And so I would encourage you to read your Bible. If you want to find out about the adversary and about how all that stuff took place, read your Bible, look up the places where it talks about the accuser, the Ha-Satan, Satan, where it talks about him in Job, and in that king of Tyre reference in Ezekiel and in the garden and in the New Testament where it talks about our adversary. So read those passages and you'll get some sense as to what is going on. But Milton clearly kind of extrapolates some of these passages and builds on them, and beautifully so and masterfully so. And he uses the creativity that God had given him in order to share the gospel message from a very interesting and different perspective. Milton makes literary exercise of artistic expression something distinctly Christian. So we serve an infinitely creative God. We serve a God that is creative beyond all beings. He is the creator of heaven and earth, and he is constantly creating. He is brilliant and beyond our thoughts and beyond our comprehension. And he is constantly moving, and he is infinitely creative. So we serve this infinitely creative God who made us to follow after him and in his image, and to be like Christ, the God-man, the creator become man. And he made us to be able to reveal that glory to the world. And one of the ways that we do that is through creative expression. Milton grasped that, and he grabbed hold of it, and as a result produced this work that everybody reads now, and that is powerful in establishing the nature and character of God in our everyday thoughts and lives. And after Milton, we're going to have John Bunyan, we're going to have the Inklings coming in the 1900s, we're going to have all these writers that kind of show up that start writing fictional works that are pretty allegorical for the Christian life. So we are going to see this explosion of Christian literature and creativity, and it's going to be beautiful from 1600s forward. And so I want to encourage you, if you are a writer, an author, a artist of any kind, produce work. Milton was blind, and his work wasn't published, and the Paradise Lost wasn't famous or published until he died. So I mean, it was published, but it wasn't famous and like in everybody's hands until the 1674, which is when he died. So he published a great deal of work, and he did it blind. So if we have our eyes peeled away from us and our ability to see taken from us, and yet we are able to produce creative works of God, what a testimony to the glory of God's name and his creative power within us, and how we can do that. So that's John Milton. Simple, short one for today. Thanks for joining me in Deep End. Have a great day. Take time to breathe. Go get to work.